Why do you want to know my name?
I want to know who I'm looking at.
By now, pretty much everybody has seen the 1996 horror classic Scream, a movie which through clever plotting and the use of meta-referencing revived the long-dead slasher genre. In Scream, high school psychos Billy and Stu hatch an insane plan to terrorise some of their fellow classmates and ultimately kill Sidney Prescott and frame her dad for the murder. Or did they? The film goes to great lengths to constantly shift the finger of blame on a variety of characters before it eventually reveals that Sidney's boyfriend Billy and his friend Stu are responsible for the murders. But here's my alternate theory. There was a third killer. And if that's not enough, the killer is Police Deputy Dewey Riley. Welcome to the second episode of What If, in which I will discuss and examine the question, what if Dewey was the third killer all along? Well, actually, yes it is. There are a couple of occasions in which it's not just possible, but likely, that there was a third killer. Let's take a look at the evidence. We assume that the first murder of Casey and her boyfriend Steve was executed by Billy and Stu, especially when it's revealed that Stu has a motive.
Hey Stu, didn't you used to date Casey?
Yeah, for like 2 seconds.
However, during the same scene, Tatum says that Stu was with her all night, providing him with an airtight alibi.
What are you saying? That I killed her?
It would certainly improve your high school kill.
Stu was with me last night, okay?
Yeah.
So did Billy murder Casey and Steve alone? He could have, but there's a couple of occasions when he's either a really fast runner and able to sprint from one side of the house to another in a matter of seconds, or far more likely that there was a third person who helped him. This is where Deputy Dewey steps in. The caller seems very confident in knowing that the police would never get there in time. Billy or Stu couldn't be aware of what the police response times were, but Dewey would be. On this occasion, there's no solid evidence, besides what I said before, that Dewey was actually at the scene. It's totally possible that Dewey could be there, but I can't say for definite that he is. Sidney receives a phone call and is taunted, then chased into her home by the killer. When the killer disappears, Billy pops in the window and conveniently drops her mobile phone, pointing the finger of guilt squarely at him. The thing that makes this a bit suspicious is the time it takes between the killer disappearing and Billy appearing. It's far too quick, leaving Billy nowhere near enough time to slip off the costume, run around the house and climb up through the window. He sure is. Not only is he on the scene, but he also happens to be holding the costume when Sidney runs into him. Was Dewey running around the house chasing Sidney?
I found this.
Who knows?
Come on!
While Billy sits in a jail cell, Sidney is called and threatened on the phone while she's staying at Tatum's house. Yes, it's his house. Of course he's there. Even stranger is the phone call only begins after Dewey leaves the room and stops when Dewey re-enters. He could easily have called from downstairs or another phone elsewhere in the house. Also, Billy is in jail and Stu has no idea that Sidney is staying with Tatum, which makes Dewey the likely suspect for the phone call. After an argument with Billy, Sidney sprints to the bathroom where she is attacked by the killer. After she leaves the bathroom, we have to ask the question, why was nobody caught inside? There's absolutely no way out for whoever is dressed in the costume on this occasion. So whoever comes in the bathroom next, probably this lady, would walk in on the killer, or the prankster if that's the case, catching them straight away. Yes! Just a few minutes later, Dewey is there on school grounds, and what makes it more suspicious is, we're actually given no reason why he's there. After all the students have left, poor old Fonzie is stabbed to death with a pair of scissors. The reason I'm picking at this murder is that it doesn't really fit either Billy or Stu's profile, and the principal shouldn't really be a target for either of those two. In addition to that, both Billy and Stu were both seen leaving the school premises earlier. Yep, just a few minutes before we see him enter the school grounds as all the other pupils are leaving, and he literally has no reason to be there at all. Also, he feeds a story to Gail about Sidney's dad being a suspect. Do police officers commonly offer up information to the press on murder investigations? No, but you do if you want to finger a patsy for a suspect. While Sidney and Tatum are out chatting and buying goodies from the shop, they're followed and stalked unbeknownst to them by the figure in the Ghostface mask. Now we could say it's Sidney's paranoid hallucinations, but she never sees the figure. It's there only for us the audience to see, which means it has to be a real person. Well, unless all of us audience members are suffering from some sort of delusion. Well, for one of them, yes there is. He drops them off at the store just before the killer stupidly stalks them in the middle of the day in full costume. But the first one has no evidence of Dewey, but what does make him the most likely suspect is that both Billy and Stu are in a heated debate with Randy in the video store at the exact same time, meaning that both of these stalking incidents have to have been conducted by a third person. While stepping out to get a beer for Stu in their garage, Tatum comes across Ghostface, who after a brief struggle traps her in between a cat flap and a mechanical garage door. Yeah, not only does Dewey turn up with Gale mid-party, he actually drives some of the underage kids to the scene to have an illegal party of underage drinking at a time when there is a police curfew in effect. He's either the world's shittest police officer or he needed a good excuse to be near the meet. In addition to this, the last person to see where Tatum goes is Dewey. While out for a stroll, Dewey and Gale stumble across Sidney's dad's car, after diving into some bushes to avoid a hit and run. Yeah, he is. In fact, the only reason they stumble across the car is because Dewey takes Gale for an evening stroll for no reason in the opposite direction of the house that he says he's there to watch. Is it an accident? Or is Dewey reinforcing the idea he planted in Gale's head earlier that Sidney's dad is the killer? I'll let you decide. After searching the house, Dewey is stabbed in the back by one of the killers before they chase Sidney into the police car. Yeah, he's supposedly dead, so obviously he didn't stab himself or chase Sidney, but how did the killer get Dewey's keys, and why? They couldn't have reliably predicted that Sidney would hop into the car, and they also didn't take the keys off Dewey when they retrieved the knife from his body. So the only way they could have obtained the keys is if Dewey gave them to Billy and Stu. And I know some of you are sitting there thinking, but they stabbed Dewey, why would they do this if he's in on it? Well, their plan to get away with everything was to stab each other in order to eliminate themselves as suspects. They would obviously do the same thing for their cunning police accomplice. So as you can see, Dewey had opportunity in almost every murder, and was present at every murder scene. But what would be his motive? We get a couple of clues to this throughout the movie. His nickname, Dewey, for one.
So is Dewey your real name?
No, it's Dwight. It's alright. Dewey's just something I got stuck with a long time ago. It's just this town's way of not taking me serious.
But as for individual victims, his sister Tatum treats him with disrespect and disdain throughout the whole movie. It isn't a stretch to say that her bitchy attitude towards him has probably been lifelong. In fact, she gives him shit right before she dies, and he's the last person to see where she goes.
Hi. Dewey. What is she doing here?
She's with me. I'm just checking things out.
So you did. Now leave.
He doesn't really have a motive for Principal Himbry, but we could say that he's part of the same town which has been mocking him his whole life. It could have been his plan all along to execute these murders and eventually stop Billy and Stu, thus becoming the hero and earning the respect of the town. But why Sidney? Yeah, why target Sidney? Well, what we know of most murders is that the victim is usually murdered by someone they know, someone they trust, and someone who has some type of emotional tie to the victim. During the movie, we discover that Randy, Stu, and Billy all have a thing for Sidney. Maybe Dewey does too. It would explain why in every movie he's desperate to stay close to her. In Scream 3, Dewey is the only person with Sidney's contact details. But hey, that's another video. Throughout the movie, Dewey acts suspiciously on a number of occasions. He randomly pops up holding the costume after Sidney is chased, he's at the school when Himbry dies and has no reason to be there, and at the same time plants the idea that the killer might be Sidney's dad. He facilitates a post-curfew drinking party for a bunch of teens despite being a police officer. He lures Gail right into the spot where Sidney's dad's car has been found, and he's present at almost every murder scene and linked to almost every murder victim. The impression that we're constantly given by the movie is that Dewey is a bit of a goof, that he has no authority and doesn't really know what he's doing. Is that the case? Or has the movie very cleverly hidden its third killer and mastermind? I'll leave you with this clip from Scream 2 and let you decide for yourselves. Peace out.
To imply
How do you know that my dim-witted inexperience isn't merely a subtle form of manipulation used to lower people's expectations, thereby enhancing my ability to effectively maneuver within any given situation?